live screen this on YouTube and then to store it on YouTube. So in future, if there's other single student coming, I can tell him or her just to watch the video on YouTube and then to participate. So these seminars are going to be relatively short, but the best way how to achieve success and how to learn is not only to listen and to discuss, but also to do something. So I recommend for everyone that during this seminar also to work on the topic. And then there will be something like homework. And at least for my students, and I can try for the DEP students, if they participate, I will also try to correct it. So for the coming weeks, now wait a moment, I have to, for the coming weeks, we will not only look on the topic of the seminar, but we will then also look kind of on what we have done the week before. Like today we talk about the structure of a paper, then you will get some homework, and then in the week 2 we talk about how to write the introduction, but we will also have a look back here what the different people have done and to discuss it, because if you do this until next week, you'll learn something, and if we discuss it of 2-3 students during this seminar, and then you also learn from each other. So like some people of you know, I like to be very organized, and I think when writing a scientific manuscript, you also have to be very organized, because it will make your life often much easier. And if you organize this together with your co-authors or your supervisor from the beginning, it might also help the communication between you and your supervisor. This is a short script in English that I gave to my students, and I sent it to somebody at the DEP. If the other DEP students don't have it, then they can please send me an email and I will forward it to them. So we will go through parts of this script. So writing is always, for many people, very difficult, and there are typically 2 types of people. First, the ones who can't even start, and then the other ones who start and they end up with something that is not clear enough. So the first step, and I will also try to show how to implement this in the seminar series, is think about what you want to say. What are the main ideas? What are the results? What are the conclusions? Especially for students, the problem is often, and I'm talking mainly about a scientific paper, not a thesis, to focus on what is really important. For example, in your thesis, you might bring up every single result that you found, but then for your paper, you might not have to present everything, but only the most important and the clearest results. And these are the results that are directly related to your main research question. For me, it was very difficult when I was a master student. I worked on social behavior in cichlid fish, and I had so many nice results, but not all of them were worth reporting. So the ones that I excluded were not results that were opposed to the other results, but it were results that did not add to understanding the story. And it was, of course, a bit frustrating, and I still sometimes dream about it. I would have submitted these remaining results that I never published into another journal. So this can be quite demanding. And then the most important point, before you start writing, make the outline of the structure of your manuscript, and from the beginning use this structure for everything. Don't have one file for the introduction, one for the materials and methods and all these things. From the beginning, have one manuscript you're working on. You should, of course, read the literature, hopefully already before you did your study, because otherwise you don't know what you're doing and why. But while you are conducting your research, you will read more and more. And while you read your literature, you can already, and this is the case where you might use a second file, you can already write down important statements from this, and you can also already, if you know where it fits, put these statements within the manuscript. I can show you an example actually, because I started on a new manuscript, I think last week or so. That is a potential review. I mean, Charlotte knows I want to work on this, about costs and benefits of group living. And there, I mean, this I only started last week, and this is exactly what I did as the title, what it's about. And I already wrote the abstract, even though I didn't read all the literature yet, but I know what are the main ideas that I want to put forward in the future and want to find evidence for this or not. And then here I have a paper that goes with relation to this that I read, I think on Thursday, and then I wrote the most important stuff in there, and later I can incorporate this within the manuscript. Then start writing, and so you have to be prepared for writing, that you know what you want to do, and when you write, then do it. Don't mix the things. Don't write and read literature and these on. Read the literature first, then write, and don't stop writing. And if there's something missing, some references, and then make a note within the manuscript. I typically mark this in yellow, reference missing, and then I look up the reference later and put it in. And if the reference says something else than what I thought is the case, then I might have to adjust or change the sentence beforehand. Of course, it's not good if you make a statement and then you just search for a reference to support it, whether it's true or not, because this is scientifically unsound, but it happens quite a lot. I mean, I have to admit, often when I correct manuscripts of my students working on stripe mice, I have to change the references they give for statement, because they just put there any of my papers, even if it doesn't make the claim. And sometimes, and way too often, the claim they make is even wrong, and I have to delete the sentence plus my reference, and I have to say, no, look, we never found this, and this is not correct. So of course you have to show that later the references you cite also support the statement you made. So this is then here, include more references when necessary after the writing. If you didn't read everything yet here in step 3, and then during the writing you see something is missing, then don't stop and look for the missing thing. Continue your argument and look it up afterwards, so not to interrupt your writing process. And then review the text and look whether the structure, the sentence, and everything is correct. And during this seminar, I will also indicate to you, we will talk about this, especially next week, how to see whether the structure of sentences, paragraphs, and sections are correct. So the first thing you should do is you should have a manuscript you want to work on. For the students here, that's for Dolly and for Patrick, it is clear they have to write the report of their internship. Lindelani will double check her report that she has written already partly and we're going to finish. Charlotte can, I don't know if Charlotte has a new paper to work on, but she should still review it again. And for Jingyu, it is also something to repeat, to be prepared when she has to write her master thesis next year, and she can already maybe now think about how to structure the introduction. And actually, I mean, she has to write this essay now for the first semester, where this might be useful, though the aim of these essays is not exactly the same like for a scientific paper. So from the beginning, have a clear structure. That is the title of your report. So for Patrick, it will be social organization in rodents. How common is IFSO, intraspecific variation. And for Dolly, the title will be something, variation in social organization of carnivores, something like this. The title typically should make clear what the manuscript is about, and if possible, should state a result. So, for example, Dolly doesn't know yet from her literature research how common IFSO is in carnivores, so she can't put this in the title yet, but she might then amend it at the end of her report, like saying IFSO occurs in more than 50% of felids within the carnivore order. But I mean, this she can only decide once she has the results. Then already write your address, where you're based at, and to which journal you want to submit it. Here for the internship, you will write instead that this is formatted in the style of animal behavior. Also here for this internship, I very much recommend this as an important exercise, that you just don't write it the way you think it looks nice, but you go here to this link for the journal Animal Behavior, and you follow their instructions for authors to see all the things one has to take care about. Because in the end, wherever you submit a paper or an essay or thesis to university, you have to write it the way they want from the formatting, or not the way you want it. Then you have the title of the abstract. So in your structure, you should already write down abstract, even though you won't have the text yet. We will talk about the abstract in detail in week 3. And then there's the title of the introduction. And until next week, you should already make the structure for the introduction. The structure means you don't write the introduction, but you write for every paragraph in the introduction one short statement what it will be about. Now the introduction goes from general to special. In the introduction, you start with something very broad, and then you end with something very specific. The specific thing is your study. So here I have the example of alternative reproductive tactics, the broad topic. The first paragraph would be about this, then everybody knows, okay, this study is going to be about alternative reproductive tactics. Then the second one, here it's about proximate mechanisms, not the ultimate function, about hormones. And then come 2 hormones as an example. When is corticosterone important, when testosterone, 2 different paragraphs. And then comes the study species. In general, one should try to bring the study species up as late as possible, because the later you bring it, the more general your study is. Everybody would like to have a very general paper or study, and that means you have more general topic, and then you have the study system. So, for example, Patrick should not start his report with talking about rodents. It shouldn't be in the first paragraph, rodents are so great and wonderful, even of course I would totally agree with that statement, but the rodents should come much later. For both Dolly and Patrick, the first paragraph would be about social systems. The second paragraph would be about getting more specific about social organization. The third paragraph would be about something like variation in social organization. And then the fourth one in mammals, it has already been some studies, but the information is kind of lacking for rodents. Or Dolly could say in carnivores, there has already been this study by Dalerum showing that it is important, but this might have to be updated. And then the last paragraph, actually, arts in striped mice, it should be about the specific predictions and aims of the study. This here is, here the paragraph 7, hypothesis and predictions. Then comes the heading of materials and methods. And for every prediction you had in your paragraph 7, you should have 1 method section. And importantly, the structure should be the same throughout the manuscript. If you have, let's say you have 3 predictions, then prediction 1, 2, and 3, then first you have to bring methods of prediction 1, then of how to test prediction 2, and then of how to test prediction 3. In the results, you first have to bring the results of prediction 1, then 2, then 3. And in the discussion, the same. You first discuss what are the implications of your results for prediction 1, what for prediction 2, and so on. So that there's a clear structure and the reader can easily follow it. And that also means for your specific manuscript you will be working on, you can already think about what subheadings do I need and to put these subheadings in. Then comes the results. Like I said, for every result, for every prediction or question, there must be 1 result part. And for starting to write it, it can be to make sure that you have a good structure to follow. You can have subheadings for this. In many cases, you might later, when the manuscript develops further, delete these subheadings because they're not needed. because maybe for the one prediction you only have 2 sentences, and the next prediction follows in a logical order. But for you to see that the structure is well, it might still be good to have at the beginning the subheadings and then get rid of them at a later stage. What you should also do already in your manuscript is think about what tables and what figures would you bring in the results section. And even if you don't have the results yet, for example, Patrick and Dolly, you should include a table with a table heading and the different parts of the table, what you would expect when your internship is finished. How will you present your results in a table form? If you make yourself aware now how what you will be working on will be presented in a table, it will help you a lot to collect the data in the appropriate way. For some other studies, instead of a table, the figure might be appropriate. And you might already think about what figure would I include. For example, if you compare two experimental groups and you want to have a bar diagram, then you should already in the structure include a figure with a bar diagram, what you expect, how the results would look like. If you don't have results yet, then you can just make up a diagram in Excel or whatsoever to put it in as a placeholder until you have the clear results. Then the discussion is the opposite of the introduction. It goes from very specific to very general. Very specific are your results, is what you found. And you first put out their significance, then you discuss them, and from there you try to get to something more general. It uses normally between 4 and 8 paragraphs, and the first paragraph is a summary of the main results, not everything, but the main results, what you found, and also with implications what it means. So don't just repeat the results, but say, or give also some meaning to it, some discussion. And then you would have one paragraph discussing the results 1 from the prediction 1, then this next paragraph discussing the results of prediction 2, and so on. And then normally there is a paragraph that is combining this and says what does it more generally mean. Let's say we found that in carnivores, just making this up, in carnivores, there's only 1% of species shows intraspecific variation in social organization, in contrast to all other mammals where the incidence is normally more than 50%. So this makes the carnivores very special, and this could be related to their trophic niche in the ecological web. So then in this paragraph, you have to go much further than to your own study results to discuss what can it mean for something else. And depending on how much you have here, this can be more than one paragraph. And then last but not least, there are some conclusions. And the conclusions should be a clear take-home message. They should tell the people, what do we know more now after your study. Often people like to include there also a statement what should be done in the future. You can do this, but don't do it too long. I generally don't like these statements because for me it's a lot of blah, blah, blah. You can always do more in the future. It's more important that you're very clear here about what is new, what can one learn from this. Exactly. And then there's a difference between when you write a scientific paper versus when you write a thesis. When you write a thesis, or also often a university report, you have to have here one result about shortcomings of the study, what problems are. I couldn't do this and this. And in a scientific paper, normally one avoids this. In the scientific paper, one goes the other way. One only says as much as one can really say. One tries to avoid too strong statements that are not supported, because they're maybe not supported as something important is missing from your study, which you couldn't do. You couldn't do this experiment, or it's only correlative data. Of course, you can then mention in a sentence, it would now be important to do this experiment X, but not an entire paragraph on it. But the most important thing in a scientific paper is you only say what you can really say from your data. And this is the main reason why manuscripts are rejected for publication is because people want to make a too big story out of the data. They want to say more than they really can do. So this is what has to be avoided in a scientific paper, that you make too strong statements. But you must have a clear statement at the end. I also don't like statements that are too general, that are not clear, but they're saying our study contributed a lot to the understanding of the biology of striped mice. I mean, that would be a statement that doesn't say anything. The question is, what did it contribute? Not that it did contribute, but what? Okay. Now what was, and then at the end, you must have the healing acknowledgements and references. So for next week, your homework would be that you should create a structure of your paper, including all headings and subheadings, so it's very clear. Also your name, a title, then the structure of the introduction, and here you should write for every paragraph that you want to bring one sentence. What is it about? So I mean, for Patrick and Dolly, the first paragraph there will be about social systems. So just write biodiversity of social systems, and then you have to think about what is a good logical structure to get from this very general thing to the more specific thing of your study. But I would already like to ask you to write until next week the last paragraph of your report. The last paragraph sums up your aims, because you should by now know what your aims are. And this is very important, and because you read so much, you learn so much, sometimes one gets confused, and in fact you should learn 10 times as many things than you write in the report. So it's very important that from the beginning you have this last paragraph very clearly, and then you know, okay, these are my aims, this is really what I want to focus on, which will then also later make it easier for you to write the rest of the introduction, for which you so far only have the structure. Also include tables in your results sections. You can't put figures in there yet, no numbers, but what tables do you think you would need for your report? Or if you want to include figures, then you can also include some figures. Here again, I generally suggest when you write a paper at the beginning to include more figures and tables than will be needed in the end, because it makes it clearer for you and your co-workers, and you can then in the next versions delete one table or the other, because you maybe say, okay, this is very clear, but we can say this in 2 sentences in the results section. We don't need a full table for it. But for the first version, to have it clear for everyone what the results are, I always recommend to have more tables and more figures, and then at a later stage reduce them to an appropriate number. And then last but not least, to repeat this, you should use the formatting style from animal behavior. And so that I have the possibility to have a look at this and to correct this until next week Friday, I would like to ask you to send this to me the latest Wednesday night. Doesn't matter what time zone you're in, because that it simply means that on Thursday, Friday, I will have time to look at this and to go through this. Okay, then we can discuss some points now, but this will be more specific for us. So I'm stopping the YouTube, but for any future student of mine who might look at this video, you will get the same homework. You might have to watch this video alone, but then you have to work on this structure and send it to me, and we will then discuss it from person to person later.